The creators of this podcast documentary series would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this project was made. This program may contain names, images, or voices of deceased persons.
Neither you or I are looking at this microphone right now thinking, I've got no idea what that is, but I'm going to just eat it. I'm just going to try. Well, big fish or sharks don't think that. They don't look at a human being and think, I've got no idea what that is. I'm just going to eat it. Because that's not how things work in the animal kingdom. They just don't think that way.
As an artist, I want to tell stories about nature, in nature and for nature. But I have realized that being behind the camera isn't enough. I want to get my hands dirty. That's how this podcast documentary series came to life. We're not only learning from our mentors. Together, we're also committing to an action that gives back to Earth. Or how I like to say, a la pacha. My name is Mauri, and this is Environment Art Stories. First of all, I would like to start with this conversation, just acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land where we stand in, these waters that we swim in and dive in, and acknowledge the Ngara people that used to inhabit these islands, the Whitsundays Islands. And I'm sitting here next to my diving teacher, Peter. And it's a bit funny, the story how I got here. I went diving for the first time in Southeast Asia. That changed my life forever. Came to Australia with the intention of connecting with the ocean, of going diving, learning more about the ocean. And then something happened in 2020 that it was one of the most gracious things that happened to the world when I was alive, which was COVID. So during that time, I had the opportunity to come to the northeast of Australia and go diving and learn how to dive and learn how to be a dive master and later a diving instructor. And I learned from my teacher, Peter, who's sitting next to me, who has a really interesting personality. He's a bit of a showman. He says he doesn't like the camera, but I think he does. And he's really good with people. I think that's the best condition that he has. He's like great with people. And he taught me how to take people diving for the very first time to the Great Barrier Reef. People that probably has never seen the ocean before, that is terrified about the ocean, super scared, and they decide to go on a boat that goes 3 hours to the outer Great Barrier Reef. And sometimes it's rough, sometimes it's like hectic, and they decide to go anyway. And so you need to convince them to trust you. So you can basically take them diving. And it's not a easy thing to do. Hello, Peter.
Good morning, Mary. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you?
Fabulous, thank you.
So this episode is a bit different than the rest because we are doing this interview really early in the morning, 5:45 in the morning. And the reason for that is because later we have to catch a boat and go to the reef. So, yeah, forgive us if we're a little bit sleepy.
Speak for yourself.
What's a coral, Peter?
It's a good question because lots of people look at coral reefs and have no idea what they're actually looking at, which is kind of strange. Can you imagine people going to an African national park and having no idea what an elephant was? But coral is actually an animal, and probably the best way to explain it to people to explain that it's a little bit like a jellyfish. It's very closely related to jellyfish, except unlike a jellyfish, which floats freely around the ocean, a coral polyp, which has a very similar body shape, is upside down and it's attached to the bottom. And as it grows up, it leaves a calcium carbonate skeleton underneath it. And usually they live together in colonies of tens or hundreds or thousands.
And in this case, when we mention about the Great Barrier Reef, what makes the Great Barrier Reef great, or what makes it so special?
I guess there's a number of different things that would do that. First of all, Mauri, it's really big. It stretches a very, very long way because of the shape and the depth of the Australian coastline. It's a very good place for coral to grow, and that those conditions extend for a very long way. So the Great Barrier Reef extends almost 3,000 kilometres up the eastern coast of Australia, and that just the conditions here are very good. There's also a very good mix of different habitats that make up the Great Barrier Reef, or the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, and there's incredible biodiversity on the reef as well, which certainly helps.
What's a symbiotic relationship? Because you can hear that term many times when you're talking about reefs, because I've learned it. But can you give us a couple of examples of symbiotic relationships and what's the meaning of that?
Sure. Well, symbiotic is perhaps a slightly broader term, and underneath symbiotic relationship, you have several other kinds of relationships. So one of those relationships might be a mutualistic relationship where both the animals in that relationship are benefiting. You might have another one called a commensal relationship where one of the animals is benefiting, but it's not hurting the other. He's just an innocent and a bystander in it all. And the third one could be a different kind of relationship, which is perhaps a parasitic relationship. But most people, when they talk about symbiotic relationships, are describing a mutualistic relationship where two animals are benefiting at the same time. So a good example of that is perhaps the cleaning wrasse, which is a small, beautiful little fish that cleans bigger fish. It appears to do a little dance that attracts the bigger fish. Bigger fish that have parasites growing on them swim into an area where the cleaning wrasse is and then stop. Often they'll sit at a rather strange angle, and often in doing so they'll open up their mouth or their gills, and the small cleaning wrasse will then swim around and pick off the parasites. It gives the parasites it gives the bigger fish the opportunity to be cleaned and to get rid of the parasites, so it benefits and the cleaning wrasse has something to eat. The relationship has become a little bit better studied recently, and there's some evidence to suggest that the cleaning wrasse has some regular customers and can be so clever in its cleaning that in the process of its cleaning, with some species of fish, it actually releases some endorphins in the bigger fish. The bigger fish then changes colour slightly, which makes it easier for the small fish to see the parasites. So it's a whole evolving story, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful just to watch.
It's wonderful. It's like you say. It changed my life forever. I heard about the Great Barrier Reef. I heard about coral reefs when I was a kid, but I wasn't born close to the ocean. But I never completely understood. And now after, I don't know, maybe 1,000 dives, I just still don't understand. I still get surprised by it. The amount of life and different ecosystems that are living together the whole time. Why are they living together? Why is that? What are they trying? Are they trying to get sunlight? Are they trying to? Why just the one next to each other and they form this big? How were they formed?
Well, the Great Barrier Reef was actually formed about 10,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age. At the end of the last ice age, the Australian coastline was out considerably further than it is today. When the ice age ended, the sea level rose, and it flooded a huge area of land that previous to that people were living on. And that's the area that is often described as sea country by our First Nations people. And a coral reef is a little bit like a forest in that the animals, the coral colonies are all competing for sunlight. So it's a very busy. A healthy coral reef is a busy place, and it's not just the coral. There are other animals as well that are competing for space to get access to sunlight. So they're always trying to outgrow their neighbours and have all developed various strategies to try and be the one that can get to the sunlight first.
How did you got to the Great Barrier Reef? Because in my understanding, you were born close to it, right?
Yeah, I was born and brought up in Papua New Guinea, although my, I guess, relationship with the Great Barrier Reef didn't start till quite a few years later when I was about 20, and I was actually traveling up north. I wanted to go to South America to travel, and I just by chance happened to be passing through Cairns, and someone took me for a dive, and I just loved it. About 20 seconds into the dive, someone showed me a Christmas tree worm, and that was it. That was the moment that changed my life. I think if you've seen a Christmas tree worm, you know what I'm talking about. So it's just a magic animal. It's hard to believe that a worm could have such an effect on someone's life, but it's special.
So before that, that was your first time diving?
Yes, I'd been snorkeling before, and growing up in the Pacific Islands, I'd done some snorkeling there, but I didn't have the opportunities really to see it, and I was very young.
Because you wanted to be a football player.
That was my plan. I
heard you were pretty good.
I was pretty average, but I had dreams, and the problem is that I liked football, perhaps at that time more than anything, but not more than everything. And to play football, you have to live in a big city, and I'm not a big fan of big cities. If I have a choice between a big city or the Great Barrier Reef, it's a fairly easy choice to make for me.
And you also got lucky because you met the love of your life on a boat as well?
Yes, I did. I took Julia for a dive, and there's something about diving that is just, and being underwater, that is very therapeutic and very beautiful. And I brought her back from the dive. And when she came back from the dive, she put her head out of the water and she looked at me and she said, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I think I'm going to cry." And I think that was it. That was my moment.
That's beautiful. And now you have a beautiful family with her. You're running the dive center.
Yes, life is good. Life is magic.
So you been diving only in the Great Barrier Reef along your life, or you've been working around the world as well?
No, I've worked around in a few different places. When I first left Australia, I spent a little bit of time in the Pacific, in Fiji, and then I went and worked in the Caribbean and the Cayman Islands for about a year and a half. And following that, I did some more travel. I did get to South America eventually, but I didn't work in diving there. And then I worked in the Red Sea for a little while in Egypt, and I did some diving on the African coast as well, down in Kenya. And then I ended up back on the Great Barrier Reef and have spent most of my life on the Great Barrier Reef, but do spend a fair bit of time still in Fiji as well, where we run some diving in Fiji as well, and so I spend a fair bit of time there.
So in these, how many years of experience in diving? Maybe
probably getting close to 35.
30. Do you know how many dives have you done?
Oh, I would estimate it's about 25,000, something like that.
Oh my God. So I want to ask you a question that probably people is asking themselves. So they probably want to know more, because we can hear all this stuff of people saying, "Oh, the Great Barrier Reef is dead, or it's dying, or this is happening." And we're not scientists. So this is a personal opinion. I want to know, what changes have you seen in all these years? What do you notice? Is it different? Is it not different? It depends where you are. I don't know.
First of all, I should say that I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
I've spent as much time as probably almost anybody looking at coral reefs because I've been a bit of an unusual dive business owner that I still love to spend time underwater and spend lots of time underwater. I've seen reefs. I've seen reefs that don't look as good as they used to don't look as good as they used to look. But I've also seen lots of reefs that look way better than they did 15 years ago. So I think it's complicated. I don't think that. I think there's lots of things about coral reefs that we don't know. There's some things that we have thought that were probably not right, and there are other things that we don't know. But I think there's lots of ingredients that make up a healthy reef, and there's lots of ingredients that make up our custodianship of the reef and making sure that we look after it carefully. As you know, I'm not someone who believes in doom and gloom. I believe in hope, and I think humans are smart enough to work out that coral reefs are worth protecting and are unbelievable. And I still see some extraordinarily healthy coral reefs in most places I go. I have detected in the last few years, a lot of people come out to the reef and make comments like, I had to come and see it before it's gone, which kind of surprises me. And I think that's a bit sad. It's a bit disappointing, but I think that's the wrong story to tell. Do we need to care for coral reefs? Absolutely. Absolutely we need to care. Are we doing some bad things to coral reefs? Yes, probably. I don't think there's any question about that. And that's not just in Australia, that's all over the world. But there's some recent evidence that's good news about the Great Barrier Reef. The most recent surveys that were done by the Australian Institute of Marine Science, which is based in Townsville, came out with some information about a year and a half ago. Every 2 years they do a survey on the percentage of live coral cover on the Great Barrier Reef. And that's one of many measures that they use to measure the health of the reef. And it doesn't tell the full picture, but it's part of the picture. And the information they came back was really good. It was good news. It showed that in the three sections of the Great Barrier Reef, the northern, the central, and the southern section of the Great Barrier Reef, that the percentage of coral cover was higher or as high as it was in 1985 when they started the surveys. So this idea of the Great Barrier Reef is all dead and dying just doesn't add up. There are parts of it that we've damaged, and there are parts of it that are under enormous stress. But things change quickly. We could have a big cyclone next week, and that can cause damage. It perhaps takes about 10 years for a section of the reef that's been badly damaged by a cyclone to recover. When we first see it at the end of that cyclone, it looks like it's never going to recover, but sure enough, it does. But there's lots of good news as well. So I don't think we should all run around. I don't think telling children that the Great Barrier Reef won't be there when they grow up is very helpful.
Well, yeah, I want to believe the same thing. I want to hope for the Great Barrier Reef and take care of it. There's something that is it was difficult for me to understand at the beginning when I was working, because there's a lot of people going to the reef every day. There's a lot of not governments. There's a lot of companies going to the Great Barrier Reef. What's our role? Like, if we're working in the tourism industry, what's our role like? Because I feel that going there impacts the reef. Like, the reef doesn't need people, right? They live in crystal waters, like they live in pure waters and certain temperatures, and they just don't want humans around, probably. But our role is to take people there and to experience that so we can protect it. And what's the role of tourism, basically?
All right, so I'm using part of a quote that isn't mine, but people will only protect what they appreciate, and they'll only appreciate what they understand. So telling people that there's something out there that you can never go and see that we need to look after just won't work. That's not how human nature works. In the tourism industry, our job is really to connect people with the reef. People will want to protect the reef if they have some understanding of it. And the best way for them to understand it is for us to show it to them. So the real role of tour guides on the reef should be to connect people with the reef. Often that means that the tour guide has to connect with the people first, but then to have them connect with the reef is hugely important. To get them to connect with the reef and appreciate it, to tell them stories of the reef, not just the names of the characters, that doesn't help. You can imagine what a fairy tale would be like if there was no plot or there was no story, if we just gave you the name of the characters. Well, it's much the same on the Great Barrier Reef. There's just unbelievable stories unwinding everywhere, and when people understand those, they have a connection to it. When people see the beauty of the reef and they see animals swimming around, and most people turn up with a certain expectation of what they're going to see. They know they're going to see fish, they know they're going to see coral, but they have no idea how many different shapes and sizes of fish and coral they're going to see. And then there's a whole myriad of different other animals on the reef that they just don't expect. Clams and sea cucumbers and sea squirts and many, many others that they'll have the opportunity to see. But getting back to your question, our role is to connect people with the reef. People won't protect something that they don't love. Our job is to make them love it.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. This is Mauri, and if you really like these episodes and you would like us to share more stories, I want to ask you for your support. This is an independent project, and we have way more stories to come, and we have heaps of footage that are going to make a documentary, but we need heaps of funds for that. So if you'd like to contribute, you can jump on the website and make a donation, which is ysdm.au. If you feel that you can't afford to make a donation now, you can just share it with a friend or in social media. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels, follow the podcast in your favorite platform, and also give 5-star rating. It's really important to us. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the episode.
What about this reef that we're going now? Where are we going now?
Okay, Hardy Reef is a reef that we would call a platform reef. So what that means is that 10,000 years ago, the reef, Hardy Reef, was the top of a mountain. When the last ice age ended, it covered, the sea level rose and it covered that mountain. And again, it's pretty amazing to think that 10,000 years ago there were people living out there. Their society, or ancient old society, is now completely covered in water out there. But we're going to be diving and snorkeling on the edge of an old mountain. Actually, it would have led right down into a river. It's the top edge of the reef is such now it's reached a level of maturity that it won't grow up anymore because it sticks out of the water during very low tide, and obviously coral can't grow when it's out of the water. Can for a short while, but not for long. So almost all of the life on a coral reef is growing around the edges that's where there's new growth. So we'll be spending most of our time along those edges of new growth, and it's a fairly steep drop off right down the edge of this old submerged mountain. You can understand that some mountains slope gradually away from their highest peak and others drop off quite steeply. This one is one that drops off quite steeply. What that means is it's a bit of a challenging place for coral to grow, because it's a bit like trees trying to grow on the edge of a very steep cliff have some difficulty. So it's always changing. Edges of that reef get damaged during big storms, but it's also in an area where there's a lot of water flow, a lot of current. That brings a lot of plankton through there, and it means a lot of fish. So the area that we're going into just has extraordinary fish life. The amount of fish, the number of fish that live in there, all of that coral's important because it provides habitat for the smaller fish, but the fish life is just extraordinary.
For the people that don't know much about the reefs or don't know when this is happening, we're also going in a special date today because coral spawning is about to happen anytime now. Can you explain us what's coral spawning?
Sure. There are lots of animals on the reef that do something called broadcast spawning, which means that they reproduce they reproduce sexually, but without physically any sort of act of intimacy. So what they do is that the male and female animals just release sex cells into the water. The sperm and egg then float around in the water, and with any luck, will bump into each other, will get along well, and will make a baby animal. Now, corals do this. Corals have a few different ways of reproducing, but the main thing that happens at this time of the year and the main way of breeding is through this broadcast spawning. So some corals are boys, some are girls, some are hermaphrodites. They'll release sex cells into the water flow. Male and female sex cell bump into each other. They make a small animal called a planula, which is a little baby coral that will then swim around for perhaps a week or so, and eventually it will land on the bottom. When it lands on the bottom, it'll grow into one single individual coral polyp. So what's happening tonight is that, yes, it's love is in the air.
Well, we don't know if it's happening.
No. They've only.
How can you know when it's happening?
Okay, so they only discovered that coral spawns this way about 40 years ago, which means that they've only watched it happen about 40 times. If we'd only ever watched 40 babies be born, you could understand that there's a lot that we don't know. There could be a lot of things that happen that are slightly out of the norm. But the scientists have worked out generally that it happens a few days after a full moon at about this time of the year. There are several triggers, including water temperature, and that the coral all reproducing at one time is basically flooding the marketplace with larvae, so it won't all get eaten. Lots of it will survive and hopefully move on and then settle into a place where it will grow.
Quick intervention just to clarify that when we say this time of the year in the east coast of Australia, we are referring to November and December.
And the interesting thing is that happens all over the Great Barrier Reef, right?
It does. Sometimes if it's triggered by temperature, it might happen at a slightly different time on the southern part of the Great Barrier Reef to the northern, but largely, yes, it happens right along the Great Barrier Reef in one giant happy night.
So for the people that don't know about this podcast and you're hearing this for the first time, on this podcast series, we are not only talking about nature, we also commit to do an action together. For example, in the first episode of Bush Regeneration, we did some planting of native trees. In the second episode, we were talking about food forest, and we helped a gardener manage a food forest. On the third episode, we built a compost stage and did some more planting. It's difficult to plant corals, and not all the times we are allowed, right? So what's the role in the humans? Are we allowed to do that? Do we know that's right? Because that's the ocean. We're mammals, but you know what I mean?
Sure. Let me explain a little bit about that. The area that we're working on the Great Barrier Reef is called the green zone, which means we don't touch anything, so we leave it here. There are places in the world, for instance, where we operate in Fiji, where the reef has had a difficult time. A big part of the reason that the reef has had a difficult time is through overfishing. And what has happened in Fiji, we've got a couple of reefs that we work around in Fiji that we've been able to restore over the last 15 years. The first part of that restoration has involved protecting the reef and stopping fishing there. Now, understand this, the mission is not to stop Fijians from eating fish. That's not the idea. But if you can imagine that a healthy reef is a little bit like a factory that produces food. If you don't have any factories, if you don't have any healthy reefs producing food, then nobody has anything to eat. And the Fijians use fish as a protein source, which is absolutely crucial. So the idea is that if we have some protected areas that are acting as factories that are allowing big fish to grow up and to spawn and to make babies, those babies will spread out onto other reefs, and eventually then they'll grow up and they can be caught there and they can be eaten there. But you need to have some factories that are doing the producing all the time. And if you don't do that, if that's not done in a sustainable way, then it's a problem. So what we've done in Fiji is we have a couple of particular reefs that are around the resorts that we're involved with, and the first step was we made an agreement with the landowners, the villages that own the land that we lease from them, and one of the agreements was that they benefit through jobs, and they benefit because they get a percentage of everything that happens in the resort. And in return for that, they've agreed to make these areas marine protected areas. And it's been unbelievably successful on a couple of fronts. The first one is that the reef has benefited enormously from having an area where it's not fished. So, and the second thing is that it has really given our local landowners an enormous sense of pride in seeing that the reefs that they've protected, their reefs, are now becoming a place where everybody wants to come and see because they're just so special. With the coral planting, there's a fair bit of information about coral planting that is probably not actually. People like to jump on the bandwagon and advertise what wonderful coral planting they're doing, and it has limited benefits, but it can be very, very beneficial. When we first started coral planting, we were pretty amateurish, to be honest. It was really just about taking broken bits of coral and sticking them back in the reef, which might have it helped to some extent. We've now developed that into a way that we take bits of coral and we make sure that we take lots of different species of coral, not just one species, so that we can increase the biodiversity. But we also need to get coral sections for farming from different areas of the reef, so we get a good genetic mix. We then put them into areas that we grow them. We grow them in these little areas, and then we use those ones constantly to then take bits of coral from and we replant them on the reef. So we're looking at a good genetic mix. We're looking at good biodiversity, and it's worked extraordinarily. It's really worked well. Now it's only one small section of the reef, and I'm not sure that coral planting in an area as big as the Great Barrier Reef is really something that is going to be necessary. But certainly where we are, it's good to have some examples, and then perhaps we hope that these very healthy reefs will be in the future become source reefs, so they will be really good reefs that produce coral spawn and produce baby fish. And the aim is to have a number of those up the west coast of Fiji where we're working, and so far it's a good, very, very good start.
So how long you been
Excuse me.
How long you been doing this planting project?
About 15 years ago we started in Fiji.
What are the results?
Oh, extraordinary. A reef that looked average is now, you'll get in there now and have a look at this reef, and it'll blow your mind. It's so extraordinary. You'll just get in there and float, and you'll just look around, and you'll truly be in heaven. It's absolutely magic.
Well, that's great to know. That's great to know that we can actually help in a really direct way. I know they're still studying it, and there need to be scientists involved, but it's good to know.
So we have approached this in a scientific way. So we have Rob McFarlane is our chief marine biologist in Fiji, and he's got extraordinary coral knowledge, and he works with some other very, very well-known coral biologists. We've got a team of Fijian marine biologists that work with him, and we also work with other universities, some Australian universities and some American universities. So it isn't just a matter of let's go and plonk coral all over the reef. We've approached it in a somewhat scientific ways.
Well, hopefully I can see it with my own eyes sometime.
I hope so.
So if we want to invite people to get engaged with this organization or just to know more, a little bit more of this project, how we're just gonna put the links, but how do we
Sure.
invite them to go?
It took us a long time, but about 6 months ago, we were able to finally set up a trust. It's called the Drawanga Marine Conservation Trust. Drawanga is the name of the Fijian island that we're on. And we can put a link up of that. But certainly, if anybody, the best possible way that you can contribute is come and visit, come and have a look. Fiji's an incredible place. The people are beautiful. They'll warm your soul. And looking at being in a place where there's just a feast for your eyes every time you get in the water, and you're with beautiful people. And it's nice to see. The world needs good news stories, and this is really a good news story.
I guess there's many ways to help. Like, people may not be able to see the Great Barrier Reef or travel to the Great Barrier Reef. That just whatever you do on land will affect the ocean. That's how I feel. So if you want to help the reef, you're gonna help it the same way you're gonna help a forest. So it's up to everyone to do whatever they feel. People know what's wrong, what's bad, and what's good for the environment. So I feel coral reefs are really big systems. Like, they've been adapting themselves. That's the key, right? Corals adapt to new temperatures. Corals adapt to whatever we are doing. They're still here. So they're giving us a chance. If they're in danger or not, I don't really know, because I'm not a scientist. But I feel they are affected by humans, 100%. We affect everything that we are around. But there's ways to help, and there's many conservation projects, and there's many people trying to do good things. It's just a matter of getting engaged, Google, and just donate, support, contribute.
Eat less fish.
And eat less fish.
I hate to say it, and I may not make any friends making that comment, but there's, for a long time, there's been this attitude of, if we want to be good for the planet, don't eat any red meat, just eat fish. And it's just not right, unfortunately, where the oceans cannot sustain the amount of fishing that is going on in them at the moment. I'm not saying don't eat any fish. That's not my message. People like fish, that's great. I'm just saying maybe eat a little bit less fish, and that will be really good for the oceans.
Yeah. Or maybe eat a fish that you catch because you go fishing. I think that has less impact. We are not anyone to tell, I'm not anyone to tell, you do this, you do that. I don't like to do that. But I feel people know. People know it deep within themselves. So getting closer to the conclusion of this conversation, our action together is going to go diving, because we can't touch the area where we're diving. We're not going to touch it. We're just going to observe it. We're going to appreciate it. We're going to show it to some people that have never seen it before, and we're going to connect with the reef. And also, my good old friend here, Peter, has helped us and organized for us to stay in the Great Barrier Reef at nighttime and actually try to go and experience and capture some images of the coral spawning. So we don't know if that's going to happen, but we're going to try it anyway. So the coral spawning is a reproduction, one of the reproduction systems of the Great Barrier Reef or any coral. And it's an enormous event that happens once a year. Let me know if I'm incorrect. It happens around this time of the year. It happens in different times of the year and depends where you are. Geographically, now we are in the middle part of the Great Barrier Reef, right?
Yeah, that's right. And on some other coral reefs around the world, it'll happen at different times. On the west coast of Australia, there's a big coral reef running down the west coast of Australia as well. And it happens, the Ningaloo Reef, and it happens at a different time of the year there, because the water temperature is still considerably cooler there at this time of the year than it is here.
And if you want to check that out, remember that this action can be seen, actually. You can go online into our webpage, ysdm.au, and just check all the action videos. Remember that also this is an independent project. This series is an indie project. So we need a lot of support. If you want to help us tell more stories, help other organizations, or record the next episode, just jump online, try to support us, follow our webpage, our social media. Donations are much appreciated. And just get engaged. Just get engaged. The idea is to invite people to get engaged, to tell good stories about nature, tell the stories of people that have been living within nature for years and years. So if you want to help us, just go inside the webpage. It's ysdm.au. What's your favorite fish or coral? What's your favorite thing inside the ocean?
Oh, that's a very big question. I'm a big fan of sea snakes. The big olive sea snake is a pretty special animal to see, and people don't like snakes, but there's something about sea snakes when they're in the water that are just beautiful. They're very special. I must say that cuttlefish and squid and octopus are also very nice. Favorite fish? There's lots of really beautiful fish on the reef. There's one that is overlooked, and that is the six-banded angelfish. If you look at the purple spots on the tail of a six-banded angelfish in the sunlight, from a completely unscientific point of view, you just have to believe that is magic. The color of those is just special.
It is actually one of my favorite fish. It's kind of purpley, but also
Yes.
like bluish sometimes. It's just, and yellowish. It's just
Absolutely. Yep.
incredible.
It is indeed.
And I want to finish this conversation with one more question about fear. Because most of the times when we take people diving, the thing that we deal the most is panic or fear. Should we be scared of the ocean? Is there anything there that wants to eat us? What's the situation with that? Should we be fearful to the ocean?
No, absolutely not. Obviously, the ocean is a dynamic place, and when you go into it, you have to be aware of the conditions around you. You have to be aware of currents and waves and things like that. But as far as things that are going to eat you on a coral reef, there's nothing. It's a little bit like neither you or I are looking at this microphone right now thinking, I've got no idea what that is, but I'm going to just eat it. I'm just going to try. Well, big fish or sharks don't think that. They don't look at a human being and think, I've got no idea what that is. I'm just going to eat it, because that's not how things work in the animal kingdom. They just don't think that way. So no, absolutely not. And it's understandable that the ocean is if you don't know it, the ocean is a big, scary place. But so is a big city. So is a nightclub. If you don't know something, so is a big group of people. So is a rainforest, if you don't know anything about it. So again, a part of our role on the reef is to connect people with it and to make it easy for them and to help them understand that there's nothing here that's going to hurt them. And of course, people come in all different states of water ability. Some people are really good swimmers, but lots of people grow up around the world in places they just don't swim. So that's a fantastic opportunity for us to be able to take those people out and show them the reef. And it just makes it all the more special because they get to see something and we get to help them through it. It's like introducing a friend to a good book. Yeah, it's a special thing. It's very nice. And they're often people that we've never met before. And suddenly we get the opportunity to spend what will be perhaps the most memorable half hour of their life, and we get to spend it with them. That's a huge honor for us and a privilege, and something we must never take for granted.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thanks, Mauri. It's been great. Thank you.
Environment Art Stories is a Yo Soy del Mundo production, written, produced, and directed by me, Mauri. The sound is edited and mixed by Yves Bongianni. The main music is created by Hamza Mas. Graphic design is by Mari Arnold, who you can also hear at the beginning of the episode. Matilda Chival is the camera operator for the episode. Special thanks to the Reef Safari and Cruise with Sundays crew.
To check out the action videos, jump on our website, ysdm.au. Please keep in mind that this podcast documentary series is an independent project with no private or public grants or funding. Your support counts, so please follow the podcast on your chosen listening platform and visit ysdm.au to subscribe or donate. Donations are much appreciated as the funds collected are used to produce future episodes. With your help, we can tell more stories.